Give me the hot sauce, Bill Buck. Give me the hot sauce.
What are you doing, Dragic? Did you not get the memo? Derrick Rose can go upstairs.
Welcome into a brand new edition of the Gimme the Hot Sauce podcast. We're here in our palatial studio in Palatine, but we're missing the red-faced Tim Kelley. We don't know where he is. If you see him on the highway, tell him he's late for the show.
Well, you see him; he's in a cyber truck, probably going past the speed limit and testing the law.
Yeah, I mean, the guy to go, AWOL like that, I guess it's not too unusual. He's missed a few shows.
Well, you know what? He only says one or two words here, so we do have a blow-up doll of Tim that we can put right here. And he'll probably say as many words as Tim says.
Hey, there's a lot going on, though. NBA training camps opening across the country. It was media day for the Bulls on Monday, and it was really interesting, Stacey. I was there, and Zach Lavine sat down, and everybody's kind of wondering what his attitude was going to be like. And Casey Johnson was going to get the first question. By the way, we're going to have Casey in just a few minutes here as our special guest. And he goes, hold on a second. I got a couple things I want to say. And he talked for like 3 minutes straight, saying, I'm 100% healthy. Don't believe anything you've read. If you don't hear it from me or my agent, Rich Paul, it's not true. He said, I'm happy to be back. I'm healthy. This is a good group, and I want to give my best to the Bulls. He said he takes a lot of pride every time he puts on that Bulls jersey. And I thought it was great that he cleared the air. He spoke directly to the fans, saying, don't believe that I don't want to be here. I'm here, and I'm going to play my best in this Bulls uniform.
Well, I don't know where this narrative came that he's a bad teammate or a bad player or he's a diva. That's far from the truth. I'm around Zach all the time. Zach loves his teammates. His teammates love Zach. I think where it comes from, most media people tried to pit, good versus evil, DeMar DeRozan versus Zach Lavine, and that's never the case. Both those guys got along. They pulled for one another. Zach, I think Zach said the right things. I watched that press conference yesterday. I thought Zach said the right thing, Mark, because he has to get out in front of it. People want to hear what he has to say. You can listen to this broadcast over here. You can listen to this radio station over here. But these are people saying, getting it second or third hand.
Right.
It's always great to hear from the person, from their mouth and where he's at. And I think he understands how important, if he still has trade on his mind and wanting to go somewhere else, I think he really understands that he has to be on his best behavior. He has to come out and show everybody he's healthy. And I think that's the key, is showing everyone he's healthy, that he's still a high-volume scorer. The guy can get you 25 or more every single night on the floor, and that he can be a leader. This is his opportunity now. At this point in his career, what's important? Winning. Winning should be the most important thing in his career right now. You've been to one playoff series, in your career. Now you should try to, in his mindset is, I got a young team. Let's do something that no one thinks that we can do. And how do we do that? Me and Vooch have to step up our games and do things that we have not done on this team for us to win. We got to play defense and we got to be leaders. And if they do that, who knows what can happen.
Hey, Cisco, you got that quote panel of Zach Lavine? For everybody watching on YouTube, you can take a look at it. We'll read it to you for those who are just listening on our podcast. Zach said, I'm in a great situation, a great headspace. I don't take that for granted. Anything negative, rumors, drama, I leave that in the past. I focus now on this team, learning and having a good time. I had conversations with the front office and the commitment and respect they gave me. I'm going to give them the same respect, not just the way I play, but the way I conduct myself. I'm excited for this camp. And he mentioned the Reinsdorf saying that they gave him a really good contract and he's going to be the utmost pro. So I think what he did there, he wanted to diffuse a lot of the storylines, the narratives that were going to come up at the start of training camp. He's in great shape. He looked like he bulked up a little bit physically. He said he's the healthiest he's been in a couple of years. And this is a two-time All-Star who's 29 years old. It's not like you got a 35-year-old guy who's just barely hanging on.
Well, I mean, he brings so much to this team when he's engaged, I think this year is so important for him because so many people outside of the Bulls organization were writing this kid off. Oh, he's one-dimensional. He's a one-trick pony. He's never healthy. He's always hurt. His attitude, all this. And this is what the narrative outside. This is one of the reasons why it was so difficult to move him in the trade, because when teams or organizations get a perception of you, Mark, it's hard to break.
Right.
Once they say, oh, this guy's a bad guy, everyone thinks you're a bad guy.
Every
29 other teams think you're a bad guy. So now what he has to do, which I know he will do, you can tell by the way his conversation was with the media, he's going to come out here and show people like, hey, I'm an all-star caliber player. I'm a top 20 player in this league, okay? And you guys must have forgot. So I'm going to remind you of who I am. And he right now is the Bulls' best player. I don't care, I love Kobe, and what Kobe has done is great, but he's the Bulls' number one player. And it's going to be interesting to see how Billy incorporates all these new parts, because there's so many new players on this roster that can really affect how certain people play. You look at Kobe now. Now you got an engaged Zach. How does that take away from his game? Last year he was able to ascend to a certain level because Zach was out. So now Zach's back. He demands 15 or more shots. Vooch is going to average 10 to 12 shots a game. Where do all these shots come from? And how do you get more shots? Is it playing fast pace? Is it, fast break basketball? You hear a lot of these guys talk about, we want to push the pace. We want to try to get up every shot every 14 seconds. Well, if you can consistently play that way for 82 games, yeah, it can be done. But I don't know if you can consistently play that kind of pace for 82 games, because teams are not going to let you just run up and down the floor. They're going to stop you.
We'll talk a lot more about Media Day when Casey Johnson joins us in just a few minutes. AK and Billy Donovan met the media as well as a number of players. So we'll get the whole rundown from KC. One of the other topics yesterday at the Advocate Center, people were asking about Derrick Rose. And remember, we were talking about the possibility of bringing him back. And then a couple days later, after our last show, he retired. And, it was a really classy farewell. He took out newspaper ads in all the cities he played, and really classy post on Instagram, announcing that it was time for him to step away from basketball. The Bulls announced today, we're recording this on Tuesday, that they're going to honor Derrick with a special night on January 4th when the Knicks are at the United Center, which is cool because Tom Thibodeau will be there, of course, who was his coach for the bulk of his career with the Bulls. But let's back up and start with Derrick. I mean, obviously it's all one of those great what if stories. He came in youngest MVP, and the world was all in front of him, and then the devastating knee injuries in consecutive seasons.
Well, you think about the pressure that this kid had coming to Chicago, hometown. He grew up right around the corner from the United Center. He used to ride his bike and dream about playing at the old stadium, the United Center, and have that pressure of coming in and having to exceed all expectations to put this city on your back. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They were so close with him. They were so, LeBron, when you talk about Jordan and the 90s Bulls, Cleveland's, the Detroits, the Boston Celtics, those teams had an opportunity to win, but Jordan stood in their way. And it was vice versa when it came to the Bulls in Cleveland and then Miami. LeBron James stood in the Bulls' way, but they were so close to get into the finals that season. And, I just remember when he hurt his knee. That was it was a really crazy year because it was a strike shortened year, and it was like 50 games, I think, that they were playing, and it was like every other night we were playing. And I remember he had a lot of injuries. He had never been injured up until that point, and he had a lot of injuries.
That whole year.
He had turf toe, he had a groin injury. And so I thought that season took a toll on him. And then they get into the playoffs. We're playing against a Philadelphia team that we were supposed to win.
Bulls were won, they were 8th.
Yeah, we were favored to win. And he gets hurt in that game. And I remember him getting hurt. And I looked over to Neil. I said, I think it's his knee.
Yeah.
And he's made that move a million times. And he's come back and made that same move. It was just a really, really freak accident. And that really changed the fortune of this franchise. Because in my opinion, there's been a lot of great players, Bob Love, Artis Gilmore, Chet Walker, Michael, Scotty. We can just name all the great Bulls. He has to be right up there in that top 5 as far as all-time great Bulls. I think his number should be retired.
What about the Hall of Fame?
I think he should be a Hall of Fame. You go back and look at everybody in the Hall of Fame that's won MVP, they're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So that warrants itself. Plus what he's done since he came back from injury. He's had 50-point games. He helped he helped really stabilize the New York Knicks. When he went with Tom Thibodeau was losing that team. And having Derrick and Taj Gibson and Joakim Noah, that helped really build a culture in New York the way you see it is now. Because when those players who grew up watching Derrick and Joakim and watching those guys play, they say, oh, well, if Tom did that to them, then he's doing it to us, so we can handle that. If you don't have those guys on your team, Tom Thibodeau maybe loses that roster because guys are not, guys don't want to be coached hard anymore. So to have Joakim there, Taj Gibson, and have Derrick Rose there to show these guys like, hey, we did worse than this. You guys got off easy. Like you got to grind. You got to work hard. And I think that changed the whole culture of the New York Knicks to the Knicks that we see now. who are right now one of the elite teams in the Eastern Conference, have a chance this year with the trade Cat Towns. They may have a chance to come out of the Eastern Conference. So Derrick Rose, he's had a huge impact on a lot of people.
And the outpouring of love from around the league, the biggest stars in the league all saying that they idolized Derrick Rose, that he was a legend. People just forget how dynamic he was his pre-knee injury. I mean, he was the most explosive guard, one of the most explosive players in NBA history. And you mentioned Taj Gibson. I heard on the radio when I was driving in today, Taj is in camp with the Charlotte Hornets. He's still banging away, still continuing his career. He told reporters there during their media day that he cried for 2 days about Derrick when he heard the announcement that he's retiring.
And here's the thing about Derrick, and I a lot of people, he's kind of like a Haley's Comet. A lot of people don't know Derrick. A lot of people just saw what they, he wasn't boisterous. He didn't beat his chest. He wasn't out there talking trash to people. He wasn't, doing anything except how he's always been. Very stoic. My teammates know who I really am. He's a comedian. He's one of the funniest people you ever meet, but the public never really saw that image of him. He took a beating when he was coming back from injury, and I really felt bad for him because I was there. I saw everything. Like, I saw the rehab. I saw him rehab, and I saw how fast he wanted to come back. This is a kid who's never been hurt before, okay? And whenever you get an ACL injury, that's something totally different. That's something totally different than a hamstring pull or a backache, tightness in the back. This is a major, major surgery. And for people thinking he didn't come back fast enough or he didn't help recruit LeBron and all these, and then people started looking for negative things to talk about, and they started tearing the kid down. And it's like, wait a minute, like, Michael Jordan ain't recruit nobody, and nobody said nothing to him.
That's right.
Michael Jordan didn't go recruit Charles Barkley or Isaiah Thomas, because he didn't want them on the team. He wanted to beat them. Now, if you want to be part of it, we'll find a way. We'll find a way to bring you on. Like Dennis Rodman, he's like, Dennis Rodman wants to play. We'll find a way to get him on here. But I'm not recruiting him. So Derrick's not recruiting anybody. Derrick's like, hey, look, y'all want to come here? Cool. Like, if you don't, cool. We'll see you. We'll see you in the finals. And it took 3 of those guys to beat one of him. And that's one thing about Derrick's team. Derrick didn't have a superstar player like a Dwayne Wade on his side. He had great complementary players, Keith Bogans, guys who are really good, solid NBA players, glue guys. But think about this. Derrick never had a Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh. No. 3 guys at that time who were the top 5 players in the league. You put somebody along Derrick, give Derrick someone like Kevin Durant and see what happens.
Well, and even with, they brought in Carlos Boozer when they couldn't get Wade or James in that free agency. And then they added some role guys, Kyle Korver and C.J. Watson. You mentioned Keith Bogans, Kurt Thomas, guys like that. But, they had Deng and they had Noah. They had a really, really good young team. And if Derrick hadn't been hurt, they probably would have gotten over the top of Miami one of those years.
Yeah, they. You think about that game here in Chicago where, he hit that 3, LeBron James hit that 3 in the corner. That could have been easy. The Bulls could have easily won that series.
Yeah, 2015.
You had a young Jimmy Butler starting to emerge, and maybe Jimmy, in my eyes, was going to be that guy that play alongside Derrick. But they never let that materialize because some people in the media here in Chicago pitted the 2 against each other.
Right.
And it was Jimmy versus Derrick, and it's Jimmy's team, and it's Derrick's team, and they pit the 2 kids against each other. And not knowing that you need both of those guys. Derrick Rose was welcoming Jimmy to come up and take some pressure off of him.
Yeah, there was one writer in town who suggested that it was Derrick and Noah against Pau Gasol and Jimmy.
Yeah,
it was like there's a big feud
there's a big
going
feud
on.
going on, and Derrick is not confrontational. Derrick is not a guy. He leads by example. Same thing with DeMar DeRozan, who was just here. DeMar is not going to be a beat my chest guy, do it this way, win one for the Gipper speeches. He's going to come out. He's going to be a pro. He's going to prepare himself. He's going to be ready to play when he's ready to play, and he hopes you follow his suit. Derrick's the same way. I'm going to come out. I'm going to bust your ass. I tell you what. People don't know how good this kid really, really was. I mean, listen, he helped my career. I ain't gonna lie. He gave me some of my best calls. I was glad I was part of it. Johnny Red Kerr, rest in peace to the great Red Kerr. He had Michael Jordan. And I always thought, what would it be like to be that announcer for Michael Jordan? How would I have done that? And it was great for Red because he got to experience like a once in a lifetime, athlete. I got lucky and got a chance to come back behind that. I come behind and replace a legend in Johnny Red Kerr, and then I get a Michael Jordan caliber player in Derrick Rose in his beginning of his career, his rookie season, and I was able to kind of just follow that wave all the way through, and he's made me a better analyst, a broadcaster. He enabled me to do things that other broadcasters can't do. I had some signature calls with this kid, so I owe him a lot. And I love that boy. I mean, he's one of the best superstar players, and I've been around a lot of superstar players, play a lot of superstar players. He's one of the best genuine people I've ever met. He doesn't act like a superstar. He doesn't stick his nose up. You need something, Stacey, what do you need? You want to sign this, you want that. I mean, just a really gracious, big-hearted kid, and all he wanted to do was play basketball and take care of his family. Yeah. And a lot of people vilified him for that. And it's funny, when you're here, you don't appreciate him. Then when he left, people saw that maybe we were hard on him. Maybe we did some things and said some things that we shouldn't have said. And you see him go off in his career, and he's had a really great career. People can say what they want to say. Well, he's not the same. Listen, he put up some 50-point games. He was starting on most of the teams he played on, and he recovered from knee surgery. And I remember, Mark, honestly, all the top guards in this league when he was playing in their prime, Chris Pauls, the Russell Westbrooks, all these guards, everybody was Derrick, Darren Williams, all these guys. They were so afraid to play Derrick Rose in a game. We call it the Rose flu.
Because he'd embarrass you.
Because when the Bulls were coming to town, mysteriously guards would disappear. Oh, so-and-so's missing tonight. He's sitting out. He's got a back injury. So-and-so's sick tonight. He's got the flu. Oh, he's got the Derrick Rose flu. And it was so funny because it happened almost on a nightly basis. Yeah. And people see how great Kyrie is. Kyrie wanted no part of Prime D Rose. He sat out a lot of games when we played Cleveland. He did not play when Derrick Rose came to town. And Kyrie is a great player, but a lot of these superstar players ducked Derrick Rose when Derrick Rose was healthy and in his prime, the flying D Rose, nobody wanted to see that.
Well, we wish Derrick and his family all the best in retirement. And again, January 4th, when the Bulls host the New York Knicks, it's going to be Derrick Rose night. And hopefully there'll be an announcement that number one
retire that jersey, baby.
Going
retire
up to
it, baby. Put it in the rafters
at the United Center. We could talk more about Derrick and so many other Bulls issues with Casey Johnson. First, I want to tell you about one of our great sponsors, our buddy Jeff Vukovich. You'll see him at the United Center throughout the season taking in Bulls games. And for all your insurance needs, auto, home, and business, make sure you call the guy who'll treat you like royalty, our buddy, nationwide agent Jeff Vukovich. You can reach him at jeffvuk.com. The phone number, 847-825-4783. Tell him that your friends at Gimme the Hot Sauce sent you in, and he'll give you a special deal. So Jeff Vukovich, our buddy, and you can be hearing the jingle about 3 times a week coming up real soon.
Yeah, it is. Nationwide is on your side.
The first preseason game coming up next week. Stacey is ready to roll. And coming up next, more Bulls talk with Casey Johnson, who's now with the new Chicago Sports Network. We'll talk about that move and a whole lot with KC. Gimme the Hot Sauce rolls on. It's now our pleasure to welcome in the Dean of Bulls beat writers, although he's not really a writer anymore. He's more of a broadcaster. Our friend Casey Johnson, who's now with the new Chicago Sports Network. Casey, thanks for joining us. It was good to see you yesterday at Media Day. We missed Stacey at the big get-together on Sunday. That was a lot of fun. They had the big farewell for NBC Sports Chicago. Casey, tell them how good that was. There were like 75 people there. Some people that go back to the start of it in 2004. It was quite the atmosphere.
Yeah, they had a great party for us Sunday night. I would say they're more than that there.
Yeah.
But what the coolest part about it was not only the OGs like, Pat Boyle and Luke Stuckmeyer and Chuck Garfien. I mean, the guys have been there all 20 years, but I also loved the people that flew in for it, like Kelley Kroll flew in from Atlanta. Sierra Santos flew in. I mean, that just speaks again to the people that made that station. It was a special place for me to work for 5 years, and I know you had a lot of fond memories there too, Mark. So yeah, really, really cool send off for that station.
Yeah, I was there for 14 years, and I remember me and Stacey doing Bulls pre and post in the basement.
Yeah, we pretty much hatched the pre and post game show.
Yeah.
Chuck Garfien did it the first year.
Yeah.
And then me and Mark took it over and got it to the post. And
I'll never forget the first night that worked with Stacey. I was in the green room, which still is the same one that they had forever down in the basement. And I brought my legal pad and I'm taking notes. And he's like, damn, he goes, you taking this serious?
And now Stacey's the one doing the prep. Come on.
And you know what? And no one invited me to the party. I didn't get any invitation.
Come on now.
No one sent me up. No one sent.
It's like one of Tim Kelley's barbecues.
Man, I tell you, see, you know what? It's lost in the mail. Maybe they sent it by pigeon. I don't know. But I didn't get my invite to the party. I saw the little farewell things, the videos, and I'm like, oh, that was nice. That'd have been nice to go to.
Oh, that ain't right.
Man, that's not right at all. I was there from the beginning. I'm one of the old guys there.
Yeah,
I was there when Luke
back when they were in the trailers in Oak Brook.
Yeah, back
right?
Exactly when we were in Oak Brook and it was in the meat locker. I was down there for that, and then we moved over to where they are currently there now. And I'm like, oh man, JJ Jackson, my man, was he there?
William Jackson? No, he didn't make it. Gail Fisher's down in Arizona. She wasn't there. I mean, there. You look back, Carrie Sayers, they're part of the original group there. Dan Jiggets.
Dan Jiggets, that's my guy.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting night, and then of course we go into media day, and KC was ready to ask the first question to Zach Lavine, and he goes, "Hold on a minute." And then he gave the 3-minute manifesto that covered just about every question any reporter would have. I thought that Zach handled that masterfully. Stacey and I talked about it briefly, but what were your opinions on what Zach had to lay down?
Well, I did then still have the microphone when Zach finished, and if you remember, that first thing I said, we'd all go home now.
Yeah, you're right.
Good night, everybody. We're done here. I mean, Zach just covered it all. What I loved about it and Stacey, Zach. I know him well. You know him even better than I do. What I loved about it was how genuine it was. It was from the heart. He actually got a little choked up at one point because I'm kind of a Zach watcher, so I know him very well to the point where I can see when emotion comes into it. So that was, you can say look, it's good business or PR or what have you, and so there's certainly an element to that. I mean, this is a business, but it was also genuine, and I know that he felt unburdened by saying it. And it's just the right message to send to start this season. So that was clearly the headline for Media Day, and I thought he handled it fantastically.
Well, and because there's been this negative narrative, all summer about Zach, the attitude. Does he want to play? Doesn't want to be in Chicago, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. I think that when you look at the situation last year, no one likes to lose, and he's used to being the guy, and he had to kind of take a back seat to DeMar DeRozan as DeMar's career was going here in Chicago. But all his teammates love him. When people ask me what kind of person he is, I say he's a genuine guy. He works hard. He's a gym rat. He spends a lot of hours in the gym, and he also loves his teammates. His teammates love him. So there's not any animosity between, his teammates and him. I think a lot of it is just that, and I think Billy addressed it this summer by going out, seeing each and one of these guys and talking to them and, seeing where their heads are at coming back into, this season. And he went out to go see Zach. And from what I heard, it was a great conversation. And that's probably been the tipping point of why his attitude is kind of where we see it at now.
Yeah. And to your point about being a great teammate, I mean, I've written this. I've said this many times. I mean, no one has championed Kobe White's ascension more than Zach Lavine, and obviously they're the two remaining and lone holdovers from the roster that Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley inherited from John and Gar. So he's been Kobe's biggest proponent, biggest champion. So he's thrilled as anybody to see Kobe's rise, and that will get into then the part where it can get tricky, because I think off the court everything's going to be fine, but on the court, Billy Donovan, you heard from him on Media Day that one of the themes of the season is going to be sacrifice. I mean, so is it going to work with having to develop all these young players while still, getting Vooch and Zach their shots and touches? That's going to be the delicate balancing act that the coaching staff's going to have to walk in. You guys know how this works. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be some drama at times. I mean, that's just the nature of any professional sports season, right? But I think just in terms of Zach clearing the air from the off the court stuff, that's the way you want to enter training camp for sure.
And Arturas was asked directly, what's going to happen in February when the trade deadline approaches? And he kind of dodged the question, but he didn't dismiss the possibility. He said, we got to do what's best for the organization. We're still going to hear the Zach Lavine trade rumors throughout the first half of the season, don't you think?
All season. And so, Zach can say, that I'm nipping this in the bud now, but I mean, you also guys know how this business works and how the NBA works. There's going to be drama. There's going to be rumors. And I can just tell you that it still is certainly the Bulls' mindset that they would be willing to trade Zach Lavine for the right package. I do agree that Arturas would not make a deal just for the sake of moving him, but I also think that if the right deal came along, they wouldn't hesitate to make it for 1 second, particularly because they're trying to obviously reshape this roster and get younger. So um, we'll see how it goes. I mean, Stacey already alluded to it. Last season was just a disaster from the jump. It didn't help that Zach was obviously playing hurt even before he succumbed to the foot surgery. And it just got off to a bad start. And Zach had a season to forget. But as I asked Josh Giddey at Media Day, people sometimes are starting to forget what
Yeah.
Zach did 3 years prior to that. I mean, it was 2 All-Star appearances and a 3-year heater where he was one of the most efficient offensive players in the entire NBA. And the shooting splits prove that. So if Zach can regain that form, it'll be good for the Bulls.
Well, and I think he will, Casey, because you have, a guard in Zach Giddey, who's very similar to Lonzo Ball as far as getting guys easier shots and making it much more efficient. If you look at when Zoe was playing, both DeMar and Zach were having really, really good seasons because they didn't have to work so hard to get shots because they were getting shots within the flow of the offense. And now you got a guy like Zach Giddey comes in, and Josh Giddey comes in, and he's very similar to what Lonzo does. Big guard, 6'5", 6'6". He's going to make it easier for everybody to score. And in transition, the Bulls' transition should be much better.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, when Lonzo was healthy, that's the only time that the DeMar Zach pairing kind of worked at peak efficiency, right? I mean,
Yeah.
ever since Lonzo's gone down, those two struggled to find chemistry. There's never any issues between them personally, but they never really obviously hit their optimum peak on the court. So, perhaps Giddey can replicate that. I mean, he already talked excitedly about how he and Zach have talked a lot about what they can do together. I mean, Josh clearly is a pass first guard. You mentioned his size. He's also a big proponent, like Lonzo, of those hit ahead passes, trying to get it up the court quickly. So Bulls want to play faster. I mean, on paper, Zach fits right into all that. He's still very athletic. He can still get up when he wants to. He's still a deadly spot up shooter. And with Giddey, being a pass first guard, that pairing could work. So we'll see how it works out. I mean, there's a lot of optimism always for all teams at this time of year. And the Bulls are certainly going to hit some bumps, particularly at the defensive end. But Zach certainly handled that first day about as well as you could expect.
And it wouldn't be the start of Bulls training camp without some injury news. You mentioned Josh Giddey. He sits down behind the microphone and said, "Well, I thought I rolled my ankle at the Olympics, but I actually tore a tendon. It's a very serious injury." And everybody's kind of like looking at him like, what are you talking about? And then he says, "But I'm not that far away from being ready to go, and I'll be ready for opening day." But for him just to sit down there and matter-of-factly rattle off this tendon that he tore and say, "But, it happened during the Olympics, and I'm going to be okay." And then, of course, we had Lonzo talking about his situation. And then I know you talked to Patrick Williams today about his foot. There's always drama when it comes to injuries, isn't there, State?
Yeah, what I will say is the Giddey thing is weird because we all saw it. I mean, it was on that last play of that game. I mean, we all saw it. But the crazy part to me is that was never reported in the Australian media. It did not leak out. I mean, he just kind of casually broke that news at Media Day. I did check into it a little bit today. And I mean, he said this, so this shouldn't be a surprise. But he said, look, if this was a playoff game, he'd be playing. And I checked into some things today, and I was told that is definitely the case, and that there are no concerns about him missing opening night. And he actually I watched him. He was sprinting up and down the court doing work with the strength and condition. I'm sorry, the health performance staff today after practice. So he was able to participate in the non-contact portions of practice today, but they're just using this time wisely. He's obviously in game shape, having played in the Olympics. And he's really had, as he mentioned, 2 straight summers of international commitment with the World Cup in 2023. So, but yeah, that was certainly a surprise when he told us that he had ruptured a ligament in his ankle or a tendon in his ankle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
When you look at this team, Casey, they're going to be nights where they're going to score because they got the personnel to score. They got the athletes to get up and down the floor. The biggest issue is defensively. You got when you try to line up out there, I saw the starting lineup today, and I was, the projected starting lineup. You had Zach, you had Vooch, you got Patrick Williams at the 4 spot, Giddey at the 1, and then
Kobe
at the 2. that doesn't scream defensive. I mean, listen, that doesn't scream a defensive
And
team.
Billy
right
knows
there.
that too going
and,
in.
And that's, I think that's the concern a little bit. I think with the coaching staff or anyone who's watched this is that they're going to score a lot of points, but they're going to give up a lot of points too. As the focus been in this early going to maybe talk about defense, maybe try to schematically do something to be better.
Well, several things to that point, and Mark nailed it. I mean, the fact that Billy Donovan brought it up in the radio interview of the score last week, unsolicited, and then brought it up again on media day, you can tell he's concerned about it. So there's that. Wes Unseld Jr. is a high-profile assistant coaching hire. I mean, I think I don't have his title in front of me. I think he's associate head coach. He and Dan Craig. He's in charge of the defense. Billy, in general, has had strong defenses in his time in the NBA, dating to OKC. And, obviously last year they fell off a cliff at that end, 22nd defensively after finishing top 10, or was it top 5 the year before? I don't have it.
Yeah, it was in the top 5.
Yeah. And obviously when you trade Caruso, I mean, yikes. So they do have a lot on their plate, but to your point about schematically, I mean, this team just gives up too many 3-pointers. It's as simple as that. And they focus largely on trying to wall off the paint. I think you're going to see that focus get a little bit more perimeter oriented and try to limit the 3-point shot, because there's too many games last year where they just lost on a math problem because they don't take a lot of 3-pointers and then they gave up a lot of 3-pointers. So I do think you have some potential to be disruptive on the perimeter. I mean, Patrick Williams obviously can be a lead at that in that department. And then if Zach can get back to being kind of that two-way player that he was showing when he was on that Olympic team, there's potential there. And then Giddey at least has size and certainly is reflective, at least, about how he fell out of the rotation in OKC in the playoffs because he couldn't play defense. So at least there's cognizance at that end. But yeah, I think it's going to be some rough sledding initially at the defensive end for sure.
Yeah, I mentioned that Patrick Williams met reporters today, and he sounded energetic. Patrick is usually kind of understated. He seemed very effusive almost about starting camp and getting ready to go. Said that he felt bad about it not being with his teammates the second half of last season. He got paid. DeMar's gone. How is his role going to change now?
Well, I mean, I feel like we've been saying it for 4 years. I know Stacey's been saying it on the broadcast for 4 years. I mean, here it is. It's right in front of you. You got to take advantage. And it's certainly a larger runway now because with, as you mentioned, DeMar being gone and the franchise showing that belief in you with that contract, you just got to keep coming back to the fact that the guy is entering his 5th year, but he's really only like a 2-year player because he's missed so much time. So you have to believe that the potential you've seen, coupled with the fact that he still really is a relatively young player, even though he's entering year 5, leads him to taking that next step, because that's what you need to see. Health will be a big part of it. I mean, he talked today about that year he played all 82 and how much it meant to him. So obviously you hope for his sake there's good health. He said his foot feels fine. I was told that the soreness that slowed him a little bit, although he said he's been playing 5-on-5 for 3 weeks and they're just being cautious by holding him out of some contact portions of practice. But I was told that the little speed bump he hit last month was not related to the foot surgery. It was probably like a compensation type injury. And I heard it was pretty minor, the little setback he had. So he certainly, as you mentioned, Mark, sounded like he was in great spirits today, really upbeat, positive, and, while respectful and thankful for DeMar's tutelage, I think he recognizes this opportunity. This is the second time we've talked to him. We talked to him out in Vegas in July. He recognizes the opportunity in front of him. He's got to take advantage of it now.
Well, and one of the things I've recognized with the roster that they put together is competition. Guys can't just sit back and go, well, I got my minutes.
Yeah.
No one's going to take them. It seems like there's a very competitive camp. I mean, you look at the rookie, Buzelis. Buzelis is going to push somebody for playing time, whether it's the 3 or the 4 spot. Phillips is going to push people. They've got some players that are very capable, and you got to remember, you still got Javon Carter still here. You still got Torrey Craig still here. You still got some guys that are very prideful that want to play, and it's going to really breed competition for playing time. It's going to be interesting to see how Billy's able to navigate through all these bodies.
Yeah, and especially with the focus on going a little bit younger, and so many players that need development, like Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry. We haven't even mentioned him yet. I mean, so I think it's certainly an opportunity for maybe the ability to go 10 deep. He's in the past typically got, like a lot of coaches, tried to go 9 deep. I think you've got an opportunity to try to steal minutes for 10 guys this year. I want to make a point about Buzelis, though, because you brought him up, Stacey. Again, a big part of what we do for a living as beat people is to kind of read tea leaves and kind of interpret stuff. And I actually felt like he was nervous at the start of his media session today because it was kind of like his first big moment. I mean, obviously we talked to him a lot at Summer League, but that was different. He was around other young, unproven players. Here he was coming to talk to us at the start, at the end of his first official NBA practice. And this is just my read. I'm not saying I'm accurate, but I felt like he almost was like a little bit nervous at the start of the media session. But this is what I like. Somebody brought up the G League. And he was like, well, I'm up for anything. If that's what the organization thinks is best for me, I'll go down there and play minutes. But I'm going to get back to this level. I mean, like he just can't help himself.
He's got dog. He's got dog in him, Casey.
Yeah,
he's got that dog in him.
Exactly. So like nervous or not, hesitant or not, he's like, I'm coming at you. And you saw that edge in Summer League, and you saw it even in his media session today. So I really, really like that from that kid.
It's funny that you mentioned he was nervous. I do the G League games for the Windy City Bulls, and when he came through with G League Ignite, they traveled like an NBA team. They had strength and conditioning people, they had media relations people, and they made a point of saying, "Do you want to interview him?" Because he's a local kid and all that. So we sat down with him for like 10 minutes, and he's 19 years old, and I'm just like, man, this guy's got a lot of brashness to him for a 19-year-old kid. And then when I'm watching the draft and he's falling, I'm going, wow, that'd be cool if the Bulls get the local kid, because I think after getting stronger in the weight room and getting some NBA experience, this guy could really be a player in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, again, you nailed it. He's 19. I mean, you have no idea what his development path is going to be. But to Stacey's point, into what I was saying, like you've seen plenty of evidence of that edge and kind of that nastiness to him. And quite frankly, the Bulls have lacked that a lot in seasons past. So I'm not counting on a 19-year-old kid to completely turn that around by himself, or maybe have that all season as rookie season. But he can't help have that come out of him. That's just who he is, how he's wired. He likes talking trash. He likes kind of trying to dunk on people. So the body is there. He's obviously got to put the work in, learn the NBA game. But the body and the competitive spirit are there. So, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Talk a little bit about, Casey, the way that Arturas put this team together is not a conventional way that most NBA teams would do it. Most teams are trying to build through the draft, get as many draft picks as possible. The Bulls are very limited with their draft capital. So he had to go a different route and started picking up these younger kids off of other people's roster. I've always said if I was a GM, that's what I would do. I'd have my scouts watching guys on the end of the benches, guys who are first-round picks who may not be playing right now on certain teams. Keep an eye on those guys. Now, you look, the Bulls have 8 guys, I think, or maybe 9 under 25 years old that have some moderate success in this league as starters or played minutes. You look at the guy I really like is Duarte. I really liked him as a player. He's a pain in the butt when he was on everybody else's team because he plays defense and he plays with an edge to him and he can shoot the three. I like the kid Jalen Smith. I always liked him in Phoenix. And then when Indiana got him, I was like, man, if we could get this kid on our team. AK really picked up some really good young pieces. Now, I don't know we're going to be able to keep everybody at some point, but I thought he did a really good job as far as getting accumulating young talent an unconventional way.
Yeah, and I when you first started talking about that, I thought you were going to bring up Jalen Smith first. I was pleasantly surprised to hear you say Duarte first, because like I'm not saying like he might not even be here past this year, but that is reflective of what they were doing. They were targeting young players with experience, and even Giddey. I mean, obviously a center point in the trade of Caruso. I mean, he's young, but he's got 3 seasons under his belt and started 80 games from the number 1 seed in the West. So that's what they did. It's not your typical rebuild where you just completely tank and go all youngsters and just draft picks. It's like they were targeting players with experience. I do think you can have the argument that maybe it might backfire a little bit in the sense that because these players have some experience, they might be better than you think. And then maybe you lose the top 10 protected pick that you owe the Spurs. that's a conversation for another question or another day. But I agree with you. Like Duarte and Jalen Smith both to me have potential, particularly Jalen Smith. Duarte had a fantastic rookie season for the Pacers. I loved him that season. He has really fallen off these last 2 years. But sometimes, as you guys know, like those guys see a new opportunity and they just run it, take it, and run with it. So we'll see where it goes. But Jalen Smith is probably the one that I think is going to be the most prominent of the new beyond Giddey of the new acquisition. So he's really got a lot of potential as a stretch five.
And then you have the past draft picks, Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. We saw Terry made a brief appearance at Media Day to ask a question. You know, he was trying his comedy skills. That didn't go real well, but he looked physically stronger. Zach looked bulked up. I mean, let's focus on Terry. This is year what 3 for him. What he's really struggled with his shot, and I know that he spent the summer working with the guy that Kobe White was working with to tighten up his ball handling. He did some work with DeMar to try to help his offensive game. Is there something? Is there an offensive player in there? Do you think with Dalen Terry?
I don't see it, but prove me wrong. I mean, I just think the shot, unless it's completely, we've seen Lonzo Ball completely change his shot, so maybe Dalen Terry can do the same. I don't think that's his role in the league. I think his role is as an energy guy. He's certainly a good rebounder for his position, and certainly has passing ability. And then he's just kind of a spark, So I think he's kind of a low minute reserve spark guy. I see you said we're going to start with Dalen, so I'm probably jumping the gun. But the guy I keep coming back to is Julian Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Stacey's in my ear all game, every game. So I've heard how much Stacey likes this guy.
Love his game.
I saw the same thing every time that guy would, not every time, more often than not, that when that guy was out there, he just impacted the game in positive ways. And it was with instinctual play, like the cut at the right time, the weak side rotation at the right time, the rebound at the right time. I think that guy has got a lot of potential. The athleticism is clearly there. I know he's a second round pick and not as celebrated as Dalen Terry, but I personally will not be surprised if Julian Phillips plays more than Dalen Terry this season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm expecting big things out of Julian Phillips. I thought in the small sample size that we saw out of him last year, as you said, everything looked instinctual. He looked like he belonged out there. He wasn't nervous like most rookies, and every time his number was called, he did something impactful in the game that you go, wow, whether a block shot or a dunk or just some athletic play. So I expect him to take a big, big leap here in year 2.
He's got to stop falling 3-point shooters. You guys know that's a bugaboo of mine.
Yeah.
He did that a little too much down the stretch.
That's one of Casey's favorite tweets. Say the one guy we haven't talked about is Vooch. I was kind of surprised they put him at the podium for Media Day. He was the first player they pulled over there, and he's the old vet on the roster now, and he was asked several times about his role in the offense, and he kind of deflected most of those questions because I think he's kind of looking around him and trying to figure out how he still fits here.
Well, I mean, he fits here because he's signed a deal when he was a free agent when they're still trying to be competitive, right? Here's the thing about Vooch. You guys know this. He's like a metronome, man. You throw him out there, he's going to get you 18 and 11 with 3 assists every night. Not every night, but I mean, those are his averages since he's been with the Bulls. I mean, and to me, he can fit any way you want to play just because he's such a high IQ player. You can run offense through him. You don't have to run offense through him. He can serve as that hub at the elbow. Obviously, his 3-point shooting needs to improve. Last season was abysmal. But he, to me, is like as low maintenance of a player as you need. Team friendly guy, team first guy, versatile player. Defensively, obviously, not an elite rim protector or ability to switch in space, but did backstop again a top 5 defense 2 years ago. So he can be a responsible team defender. It's got to be the scheme around him that helps him play better at that end.
Let's talk a little bit about Ayo. I thought Ayo last year had a huge jump and really worked on his shooting. He was knocking down that 3-point shot much more consistently. How's he looked so far that you've seen him? He looks stronger.
Yeah, I mean, again, another guy, talk about low maintenance because you never have to worry about that guy. You can start him. You can bring him off the bench. You can play him 10 minutes. You can play him 35 minutes. He's just going to just provide for you in every way. He's relentless in his approach. Man, you look at his numbers from January on, his shooting splits and his per game averages, he showed you that he has offensive potential too. He's not just a reliable reserve, particularly the defensive end. He can do it both ends. So a lot of hopes for him. And in a weird way, this team is kind of becoming like Kobe and Io's team. I mean, they obviously organized that offseason workout in Miami that a lot of players attended. Both those guys are growing into roles as leaders, and they just kind of define kind of the new vision of this roster. So those two are very close, and they're both tough, both physically and mentally. And he can accept hard coaching. You can't say enough good things about that guy. They're both on value contracts too. So I'm like you, Stacey. I expect big things from Io this season.
Hey, before we let you go, we spent a good amount of time in our first segment talking about Derrick Rose and his retirement and the Bulls' plans to honor him on January 4th. What are some of your favorite memories of covering Derrick?
Well, I've said this before and I've written this before. His MVP speech to his mother, Brenda, I'm not kidding when I say this. It's my most powerful memory in my 34 years as a sports writer. I will
Wow.
never, ever, ever forget that moment. You felt like you were in a room where Derrick was. It was just Derrick and Brenda in the room. Everybody else faded away. Derrick turned to him. And I've always said, like, people who said he wasn't an eloquent public speaker, man, get out of here. Go watch that speech. That was one of the most beautiful tributes I have ever seen. And I had worked really, really hard behind the scenes. I was working for the Chicago Tribune at the time to interview Brenda, who did not want any attention at all. And after that speech, she had set it up. She did one TV interview with David Aldridge, who at the time worked for TNT, and one print interview with me. And she was crying. Tears were coming down her face because of what her son had said to her in that moment. It's one of the most beautiful moments. So I know you can talk about all the on the court stuff. Stacey's obviously, legendary for his calls for those, and rightfully so. And trust me, I like those too. That moment right there is not just my favorite Derrick Rose moment. It's my favorite moment from my 34 years of doing this. I will never forget that moment, ever.
Yeah, it was very impactful. I told Mark earlier when we were talking about it's like the Haley's Comet. You don't see that kind of player come around very often. The Michael Jordans and all the great players. You don't see them come around. And a guy his size, pound for pound, it's not like he was 6'6". You're talking about a 6'3" point guard that plays above the rim, 45-inch vertical, speed, can outrun everybody on the floor. And then I was telling stories about how some of these elite guards in the league at the time would duck Derrick Rose in head-to-head competition. They'd be, they're sick that day. We always call it the D Rose flu. The Chris Pauls. Guys did not want to see him because he was so athletic and he was so dominant at that time, especially during the MVP season. Nobody wanted to see that kid.
They were scared of him. You're spot on, Stacey. And look, I always say, like, player, you know that Stacey as a former player. Players know more. Forget what the media does. Coaches, I mean, they're all important, but like players are the ones who know. And players were scared of that dude. And you can hear them on podcasts today, finally admitting, like, Prime D Rose, there was nobody like that guy. The ferocity that he played with which he attacked the rim, the way he could contort his body, the dunks that he had from his position, just amazing stuff. Question for you guys: do the Bulls retire his jersey? And
they should.
Yeah,
they should.
We're talking about that. They may announce that January 4th.
They should retire his jersey because arguably he's one of the had he not had that injury, I mean, would have, could have, should have. He was on the verge of being probably one of the best guards in the NBA history, just based off of where he was at that particular time before the injury. I think he's done enough, even post injury, to solidify that. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I know people will be like, "Oh, he's not a Hall of Famer." He's a Hall of Famer because everybody who's got an MVP is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and just to me, being from Chicago to me takes it to another level, and the impact he had on the city, from Simeon on, and just to represent the franchise and kind of lift it to those heights for the first time since the dynasty, even though they didn't win a championship. I agree with you guys. I mean, his impact cannot be overstated. So I hope that they choose that decision because I think it's the right one.
Hey, one last thing. I got to tell Stacey this story. Casey will get a laugh out of it too. We mentioned the party on Sunday.
Yeah.
Drinks were flowing. people were hitting it pretty hard.
Oh, I bet.
So we're like 2.5 hours in, and everybody's having a good time and catching up with old friends. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 7-foot Will Purdue stands up on a table, grabs a microphone, and addresses the crowd like he's running for office or something, thanking all the little people who made us look good along the way. And I'm like, Will, why are you standing at a table? You're 7 feet tall. I mean, it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. And I'm looking around the room, and everybody was having a good time. And then all of a sudden, it's like, screech!
That record in the party. Yeah. He's just mood killer. That's real. Hey, Will, if you're watching, baby, I know you are. That's your new nickname, the mood killer.
Were you shocked when you saw him climb up there, Casey?
Thankfully, I had just left before that because I had not heard that story yet. So I just heard that for the first time. But I do know he was wearing shorts that day, so it makes this visual even better. He was wearing shorts.
He might have been tore up a little bit. He might have had a little bit too much of the Kentucky bourbon.
I don't think Will's much of a drinker. I think he was mostly working the crowd. But it was.
But why in the hell at 7-1 would you get on a table?
He
They
just
can see
decided
you already.
that Kevin Cross, who was the general manager, was there. He could have said some words to the group, but Will Purdue decided that wasn't Pat Boyle, wasn't Chuck Garfien. It was Will Purdue who had to say something to the assembled folks there. It was an indelible image. I don't know if that was posted on social media, but when I think back to Sunday night, that one stands out.
Wait till I see Willis.
I'm sorry I missed that one, Mark. I'm sorry.
I would have loved to see that
great.
too.
Hey, I'll text you the photo. I got a photo of it. It's
right.
pretty.
I would have
funny.
loved to see that because for Will to get up and do that. I would love to see that.
Yeah, well, he's got a new gig over at CHGO, so he's just feeling himself right now. So good for him. We're happy for Will, and we're happy for KC. We look forward to your work with Jason Goff and Kendall Gill on pre and post, and hopefully we'll see you during the games with Stacey and Adam as well.
Can't wait, guys. Should be an intriguing season as always. Thanks for having me on today.
I'm looking forward to it, KC.
Thanks, KC. We appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.
All right, buddy.
As Casey Johnson, our guest on Gimme the Hot Sauce, we're going to talk about the great Dikembe Mutombo and Pete Rose passing when we return on Gimme the Hot Sauce. Our special thanks to Casey Johnson for hopping on the show. You can follow his coverage all season long on the brand new Chicago Sports Network, which launched today. I know people are getting their rabbit ears, their antenna, trying to dial it in. I heard a story from somebody in the media. I think it was Mark Lazarus, said that he went out and bought an antenna. He hooked it up, and he's trying to get it because they just launched today. And he said it was like the old days, like ghosts, and you could barely see it.
Oh, wow.
And then it just the signal dropped. So they're going to have a lot of issues trying. They got to get themselves on cable.
Hey, listen, I'm just going where they tell me to go, Mark. I don't know anything. It's like Buzz Aldrin and then what's the other guy that went to the moon? It was
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong. Yeah. That's me and Adam. We're going to the moon for the first time. We don't know what to expect, but I tell you what, it's going to be fun and exciting for us.
Yeah.
I think this team is going to be better than what it is. I think a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised about watching this team. They may not make the playoffs, but they'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, making the transition to the sports world getting hit with a big 1-2 punch this weekend. First, we heard the news that Dikembe Mutombo had died of brain cancer at the age of 58, and I know you had a chance to meet Dikembe and you wanted to share some thoughts.
Yeah, first of all, he's one of the nicest people you ever meet. Biggest heart, very generous. He's very, he's responsible for bringing light to African basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Luol Deng is doing it now. Basically, he's taking the mantle from Dikembe, but both those guys are pivotal of really bringing more players to the United States from Africa. And my first introduction to Mutombo, it wasn't in the NBA. I was part of the Olympic tryouts in 1988 when the college team was the last year they sent college players, and I was in the final phase of making that team. They had like 16, and you're only taking 12, and so we were at Georgetown all summer practicing, and Mutombo had just got off the boat. He just came over from wherever. Literally got off the boat. And I'd never met him. All I heard was his voice in the hallway. There was this big booming voice. And if you ever heard Mutombo talk, it sounds like Cookie Monster for real.
You'll never forget it.
You'll never forget the voice.
Yeah.
No. You've seen those commercials.
Yeah.
So he was in the hallway. And the Georgetown players, instead of teaching him English, they were teaching him curse words.
Yeah.
And they thought it was funny. Like, it's like taking your 2-year-old and you give him a curse word and he says it and you laugh and it's cute. This is a guy like 18, 19 years old. he knows 6 other languages, but he doesn't know English. So we're practicing, and John Thompson's talking. He's got a booming voice, but this voice was booming over John Thompson's voice. And we was like, wow, that sounds like a giant. So, he's out there dropping F-bombs, F you, ha, 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 ha. And so I was like, oh my God, this guy's got to be like 9 feet tall, because that voice, I'd never heard a voice that deep.
Yeah.
And it was very powerful. And he was out there cursing, calling people names. He was laughing, and he didn't put anything in a sentence. It was just like, F you, kiss my, everything. And then I finally met him. I was going to the cafeteria, and I see this huge guy. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, this dude's like 7'3", 7'4". I'd never seen anyone that big up close, We were practicing with Pat Ewing at that time. He was down there working with us. And then we had David Robinson down there, who was 7'1". So those are the biggest guys I'd ever been next to. And I stood up next to this guy, and I swear, he looked like a tree, like a big giant. And I go, hey, are you the guy that was cursing the other day? And he had a translator with him. And so immediately, instead of saying hi, hello, he just said a curse word to me. F you. And I asked the translator, I said, man, is that the only thing he knows? Because that's the only thing I've heard since he's been here is curse words. And he said the Georgetown players have been teaching him all the curse words. They're not teaching him English. They're teaching him the curse words. And so he walks around all day saying this to people. So someone says, hey, how are you doing? Hello. He is F you.
He thinks like it's a greeting.
Yeah, he thinks it's a greeting. And he laughed. And so, John Thompson immediately said, I'm going to have to break him for this. We can't be having this. I can't have him in my locker room saying this. So, but a great guy. When he got to the NBA, he's probably one of the best defensive players. I remember John Thompson saying, because he had Patrick Ewing, and he was going to have, Lonzo Mourning was going to be a freshman on that team. And I remember him saying that Mutombo is going to be one of the best defensive centers, not only in college basketball, but in NBA history. And, 4-time defensive player of the year, he wasn't far off.
Yeah, the humanitarian work that he's done in Africa will live forever. I mean, Stacey mentioned the fact that Lou Aldang has picked up the mantle, and these guys not only talk the talk, they walk the walk with their money and going over there and supporting youth basketball, hospitals that they've helped.
Oh, the hospitals,
especially.
they put so many hospitals over there to help those countries, and they were in need. And they put their money behind it. And I tell you what, they have done a tremendous job. And this death is worldwide. This is not just the NBA community. A lot of people across the country and across the world realize how important this guy was.
Yeah, he made an impact that will last forever. Dikembe Mutombo passing away at the age of 58. And then later the same day, we find out the news that Pete Rose, the hit king, died at the age of 83. That number will be etched in people's minds, 4256. That's the number of hits that he accumulated in his career. And when you think of Pete Rose, you see the images of the headfirst slide, playing all out, the All-Star game where he crashed into Ray Fosse to win the game for the National League. Yeah. I mean, they call him Charlie Hustle, and he was the epitome of all-out effort because he barely made it to the major leagues. He was a modestly talented guy. He taught himself how to switch hit to try to improve his chances to be a major league ball player. And the guy just was able to grind through 20-plus years in the big leagues and became the all-time leader in hits. And obviously he violated rules by betting on baseball. He got the lifetime ban. But it's kind of sad when you think about the history of baseball that Pete Rose was on the outside looking in. And now that he's passed, that probably at some point in the near future, he will be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I heard that discussion earlier today, and there were some good points that he should be, and there's some good points that he shouldn't be. You go back to, the Black Sox. Shoeless Joe Jackson is not in the Hall of Fame, and he's been gone over 100 years. And so, it was proven that he wasn't part of that, the Black Sox thing. So if they didn't let him in, they might not let Pete Rose in. But at the same time, man, what he's done in baseball and the hit king, and that's never going to be broken. There's been some good hitters come up, through the ranks that I think that mark's going to be here for a long, long time.
Yeah, the Big Red Machine winning the championships, 75 and 76, one of the greatest teams, I think, in baseball history.
Oh, Ken Griffey Sr., yeah, Johnny
George
Bench,
Foster,
George Foster,
Concepcion.
Joe Morgan.
Yeah,
they had a squad.
That was
David Concepcion. That was my guy. He had a cool name.
Yeah.
He had a cool name, Concepcion.
And the great Johnny Bench.
Johnny Bench from Oklahoma. Shout out to Johnny Bench, baby. A lot of great players came from Oklahoma.
That was a fantastic team, and Pete Rose went on to have great great chapters with the Expos and the Philadelphia Phillies. So, Pete Rose passing away at the age of 83. So it's been a kind of a sad week in the sports world. We should mention before we get out of here, how about the Bears? They get a win on Sunday and a couple of touchdown drives in the second half where they look like an NFL offense. They ran the ball and threw it effectively.
Well, I tell you what, it starts with the running game. The offensive line, we've been hard on the offensive line. We've been sitting here on Give Me the Hot Sauce, talking about they stink, then you get new people. Shout out to the offensive line. You look like an offensive line. They were blocking. They opened holes for Swift. And I honestly believe two things I thought helped the Bears. Offensive line being better, opening holes for Swift to be able to establish the running game, and then also having Keenan Allen back. That's a security blanket for Caleb. He's able to check down. If the deep ball's not there, he's able to find a reliable receiver who can get open and bail him out if he gets into trouble. He took a couple of sacks, but he didn't turn the ball over, which is important. And I think everybody's so caught up in, what the rookie quarterback is doing in Washington. Bears got the wrong pick.
80%
I saw
of his
Shannon
passes.
Sharp saying something that the Bears got a diva, and then the Washington.
No.
And see, everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. Listen, this kid has not shown any diva qualities.
No,
Okay,
not at all.
I mean, he comes prepared. He wants to win. You can say whatever you want to about painting your nails. I saw a kid in Alabama who scored the winning touchdown, got his nails painted. And he says his little sister paints him every game. So, you know what? The kid is not a diva. He hasn't shown those qualities. He has leadership qualities, and he's going to be a very, very good quarterback. Now, because someone's having a great year now doesn't mean they're going to be a great quarterback 3 years from now. You go back and you look at guys like, Robert Griffin III, who came out like gangbusters and then gets hurt and was never the same. And then, Kirk Cousins, who was drafted after him, ends up being a quarterback that's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. So you got to be careful about anointing guys.
Yeah.
Let guys work through. I think the Bears, that was a good win for the Bears. It's confidence for them that they went out and beat a good Rams team. And now, of course, the Rams didn't have their two stud receivers, and who cares? You play with whoever comes up and shows up on Sunday. They won. Matthew Stafford was there. I'll tell you what, Matthew Stafford's a pretty good quarterback.
Oh, he can
sling it, boy.
Yeah.
His balls. I was telling my friend, I was watching. Shout out to Skip Pastor. I was at his house over in Lockport. We were watching the game together. He's in the hospital today. Shout out to you. Hope you feel better, buddy.
Get well.
But I was watching Stafford throw that ball, and I was like, man, he throws a beautiful football, man. It's a tight spiral, and it gets where it needs to go. I can see why the receivers, like, they have these all-pro receivers that get 110 catches a year, because you get that ball, you can't miss it.
One thing that was amazing to watch the game, I was covering the game on Sunday, and one of the underrated performers in that one, I think DeAndre Swift was the player of the game, 165 yards total offense, but the punter, Torrey Taylor, I mean, he pinned them deep a couple of times. That was a huge factor in that.
I'm going to tell you something. I tell you what, he might have changed the way teams look at punters.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So the punts he made in that game really put the Rams in a tough situation. They were playing from their own territory almost every single time. I'm telling you, the Bears might have started something now, a new trend that teams are looking for punters. If they can find a punter like that in the second or third round, do not be surprised. And if he continues his success, which I see it not changing, don't be surprised if teams don't start drafting punters.
Yeah, people were looking at Ryan Poles like, how can you take a punter in the fourth round? He knew exactly what he was doing because that guy's a weapon.
And if you have a good defense like the Bears have, and you got a punter out there that's going to keep the team in their territory all the time, and the defense has a chance to get turnovers, sacks, pick sixes, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I'd rather have a punter that can do that than a punter that shanks balls. And you give a team that started at the 50-yard line. Man, hey, kudos to Ryan Poles. We've been tough on Ryan Poles about the offensive line, but he went out and got this punter when no one else would.
Yeah, he's a real weapon. Hey, before we get out of here, it's our regular feature. What are we watching? What do you got for the folks this week?
Oh, I've been checking out this show called Fallout. It's on Prime Video. It's a video game, but they made it into a TV show.
Cisco's nodding his head. He likes the pick.
It's a cool show, man. Like my favorite character is the Ghoul, the guy right there. See the guy in the brown jacket?
Yeah.
This guy is like, it's an amazing show. There's a lot of action to it. And it's just like, it's worth watching. If you want to really watch a really good show, I urge all our viewers to watch that.
Yeah, I checked out a movie on Netflix with Mark Wahlberg. It's called The Union. They're a secret government agency that, everybody knows about the CIA and the FBI, but this is even more deep cover, and they were trying to uncover a mystery overseas. Got Halle Berry in there, so it was a nice light show, a good couple-hour movie. So
I think I'll watch it just for her.
yeah, it's a fun ride for a couple hours, and I know that we've been keeping up with Tulsa King. That's getting good too.
Yeah, Tulsa King is a new episode of Tulsa King out. Power, I just got to watch a new episode of Power, so I'm keeping up on my shows now because I know once the season starts, I'll be on the road, and then I'll have to watch. I have to binge watch a lot of stuff. So when we're in Cleveland, Detroit, we no one goes out in those cities.
Stacey's looking forward to the start of preseason coming up next week.
Mark, you didn't have to say that. You didn't have to go there, Mark. Mark, you didn't have to go there, because, I will be there. I will be there. We're playing Milwaukee, I think, second preseason game.
Yeah.
And guess what?
What?
My favorite limousine service is taking me to that game.
Oh, how about that?
My driver, Mike Amaral, baby. Windy City Limousine provides championship service. Making a reservation is so easy, it's a slam dunk. Let Windy City break the full court pressure of traffic and get you to your destination in style and on time. Contact them at 847-916-9300, or you can go to windycitylimos.com. That's an annual trip. Mike always takes me up there. He drops me off. He's my little bodyguard.
Mm-hmm.
And we get through the Milwaukee crowd because, they get hostile now that they're winning. When we were winning, they were always cheering for us. That used to be like, United Center North. But now that they're winning, now they turned on us. The fans have turned on us up there. And so hopefully we get a win.
I really like the way you made that transition.
Yeah,
to the
see,
end.
Mark,
that was expertly done.
You do commercials. You got to learn how to do those kind of things, Mark. Behind the scenes, I've been studying.
Yeah, and don't forget, for all your hot sauce needs, go to GimmeTheHotSauce.com.
And we'll be close. We'll be close.
All
to
natural ingredients.
All natural. That's what she said.
You got 4 great flavors. Check it out. GimmeTheHotSauce.com. Tell them Christopher Walken sent you.
Yeah.
Use the Walken Fire quote.
Christopher. Do we have Tim's picture of kindergarten? Did you put it up there?
Yeah, before we get out of here. Tim's not with us today.
Yeah,
but
Tim's not with us, but we got his kindergarten picture.
His spirit animal with us.
This is his kindergarten picture. This is Little Whispers back in kindergarten. And, there he is right there.
That's the striking resemblance. Leave him laughing.
Hey, that was Tim back in kindergarten. He's changed quite a bit since then, but, since he's not here today to defend himself, I decided, I got that from his wife. She gave that to me. She said, I want you to put little Timmy up there, how cute he was. And
Little
there he
Whispers.
is. He looks like part Tim, part Steve Buscemi.
Got the bowl haircut going.
He got the bowl haircut going on. Oh, my God. Look at a little teddy bear. Teddy bear shirt on. So that's what Little Whispers look like. He changed now. He's a lot more redder. He's a lot more muscular. He's totally different now. Shout out to my boy Whispers.
Well, in one way or another, Timmy Whispers always brings the show.
He always brings to an end.
to a screeching halt. I want to thank Cisco for doing solo duty today.
Solo.
Did a great job. Thank Casey Johnson for joining us. Bulls basketball about to get going, and you can check it out on the new Chicago Sports Network, and we will have a brand new show for you next week. Until then.
Drive home safely, Chicago. Beep, beep. Hey, what's up? This is Stacey King.
And I'm Timmy Whispers.
Of Gimme the Hot Sauce podcast. Each week, make sure you join us. Timmy Whispers, what do they need to hit?
They need to hit like and subscribe so they get all the notifications and news from our podcast.
That boy is sweet. Just make sure when the video's over, click to the left, and you'll hear our previous videos for the previous week and have some fun, because we'd love to have fun on Gimme the Hot Sauce podcast.
Woohoo!
Oh my goodness! It's only preseason, but I'm hyped. Neil Thought, Jimmy G buckets gets buckets.